Canto 4, Book 3 of the Faerie Queene, is where the plot starts to become genuinely hard to follow, in that it's moving in multiple directions. Now, slipperily, Spencer has started some of these plot threads early. In Canto 1, we saw Arthur and Guy and Timaeus, Arthur's squire, run off to chase this unknown beauty, who we will later learn is named Florimel, and the grisly foresters who've been chasing her. We get back to that story in Canto 4, but first, other things happen. We introduce a brand new character, Marinelle, who we beat up and terribly wounded and take off to be healed and won't see again for the rest of Book 3. Though he's coming back, he's just not coming back anytime soon. We can look for Marinelle to get back on his feet again and pursue his love life again in like Canto 11 of Book 4. It's gonna be a while, gang. So in our class, we're never gonna get there. Does it matter? Yes. Yes, Spencer actually has a reason for putting Marinelle here. Following plot is a mistake. Following structure, repeated motifs and images, and character growth is the way to get through this story and stopping to enjoy things. With Marinelle, Marinelle is defending a kind of wonderful beach full of gold, ore, and jewelry that he doesn't care about, he just has, that Britomart doesn't care about either. But there's this splendid fantasy image of the rich strand, this bejeweled beach, which Marinelle is defending rather than dating, which is what he's supposed to be doing, and why the Knight of Chastity knocks him on his behind. I would point out that this canto is bookended essentially by two extended lovers' complaints, standard courtly love complaints, which repeat or reiterate stuff we've seen in earlier cantos already, and we're going to get it twice here. Not quite at the beginning, but a few stanzas in, Britomart is going to stop and unleash a 3-stanza lover's complaint. Spencer's stanzas are serious. The end of the poem is I think a 7-stanza complaint from Arthur, he's complaining so much it's like he's Hamlet. He's complaining that he hates the night because he's a lover, and the night, as we've seen repeatedly in this poem, is bad. Darkness is bad. Light is good. That said, even in a poem where day is unequivocally good and night is bad, Book 4 is where we start to get some moral complexity. This is a poem with good guys and bad guys in a simple and indeed simplistic way. We start to have characters who are not simply good or evil. Is Marinelle a good guy or a bad guy? Mostly a good guy. Here we're going to have to knock him off his horse. Marinelle occupies that psychologically interesting space where most of us live, between being perfectly virtuous and perfectly villainous. He is mostly a hero. I don't know, he's 3/4 of a hero, he's an 80% hero, maybe later he's an 85% hero. But he's not 100% heroic, and we're going to meet more characters like him as Book 3 goes on, and for me at least, that's a relief. They are complicated, they do dynamic things, they are not always right and not always wrong. Okay, let's move back to the first complaint we get. Here is my girl Britomart. She's complaining and looking at the ocean. Huge sea of sorrow and tempestuous grief, wherein my feeble bark is tossed long, far from the hope and haven of relief. Why do thy cruel billows beat so strong, and thy most mountains each on others throng? Thy moist mountains, each on others throng, threaten to swallow up my fearful life. Oh, do thy cruel wrath and spiteful wrong at length allay, and stint thy stormy strife, which in thy troubled bowel reigns and rageth rife. For else my feeble vessel crazed and cracked through thy strong buffets and outrageous blows cannot endure, but needs it must be racked on the rough rocks and on the sandy shallows, the whiles that loved steers and fortune rows. Love, my lewd pilot, hath a restless mind, and fortune boatswain has no assurance knows, but sail withouten stars against tide and wind. How can they other do, since both are bold and blind? Thou god of winds that reignest in the seas, that reignest also in the continent, at last blow up some gentle gale of ease, the which may bring my ship, ere it be rent, unto the gladsome port of her intent. Then when I shall myself in safety see a table for eternal monument of thy great grace and my great jeopardy, great Neptune, I vow to hallow unto thee. Great. We have, first of all, a classic Petrarchan image. Petrarch is the great courtly love sonnet poet of the 14th century. He's somebody whom certainly Chaucer had read. Spenser's read him too. Love is a ship on a stormy sea is a standard kind of courtly love sonnet tradition device. It's not the only time we'll hear it. In fact, we hear it again leading up to Arthur's complaint about darkness. This is just before stanza 53. Though when her ways he could no more descry, but to and fro at disadventure straight, like as a ship, whose lodestar suddenly covered with clouds her pilot hath dismayed, his wearisome pursuit perforce he stayed, and from his lofty steed dismounting low, did let him forage. Down himself he laid upon the grassy ground to sleep a throw. The cold earth was his couch, the hard steel his pillow. That's the same metaphor. Again, it's a classic, and it's going to keep coming up. These are traditional courtly lovers, and they've got their traditional courtly love moves. Part of Spenser's game is remixing the same basic move every time. Let me show you that move again with style. And then we have a stanza again about Arthur as a good courtly lover, unable to sleep, and then he complains against the knight for 7 stanzas. Not because he's not heroic. Prince Arthur is nothing if not heroic. He is unimpeachably heroic. Complaining is what lovers do. He's not emo. He's Petrarchan. Absolutely Petrarchan. So is Britomart. Britomart's early complaint draws on the classic love as a ship at sea tradition, and you always walk through that stuff like, oh, the stars you can't see, the rudder, the compass, the this, the that. Well, it's called a conceit. It is an elaborate metaphor where every detail is compared to another thing, and this kind of Petrarchan conceit, like the steering, and then the sails, etc. I'm blown off course by the wind of sighs. You get it. If you don't get it, there's going to be more. There's going to be so very much more. But Spenser also stealthily is bringing up the Neptune idea because we're going to meet a character who is in fact like going to be healed by Neptune before this canto. Before this canto is finished. Like Britomart actually appeals to the sea god before this kind of like god son of the sea god comes along, and she knocks him on his behind. Then we have an elaborate we have an elaborate story in which Marinel's his goddess mother, heals him. And why she got him in trouble in the first place? You see, Marinel's problem is his mother heard a prophecy that a woman would undo him, cause him dismay or death, and so therefore has kept him away from the ladies, arming him heavily, living this kind of armed virginal life, defending his golden beach, which is also a gift from his supernatural mother. This is a story we've heard before. It echoes stories from classical mythology, like the story of Achilles, who also has a sea goddess mother, in fact, who tries to protect him to keep him alive. And there's one tiny flaw in her plan, and it fails. There are also stories in Homer and in Virgil where, as Marinel's mother does here, a goddess takes her wounded son or favorite off to a supernatural place to be healed. We have not seen In book one of the Faerie Queene, that move has already been done before. So this is standard. Marinel is living the La Vida Classica like a Homeric or Virgilian epic hero. And he's been knocked on his behind. Then we move off to Arthur and Guyon is actually leaving the poem completely for a while, and Timaeus, Arthur's squire, who have gone three different ways trying to chase this terrified blonde lady on her horse, and the forcers who are chasing her. And then we have this bit where Florimel, the lady we will soon know in Canto 5 as Florimel, won't stop for Arthur. Arthur is getting frustrated because, good guy though he is, she keeps running from him. She's been so terrified, she's afraid of the rescuer too. This doesn't seem to have anything to do with the Marinel part of the canto. It has everything to do with the Marinel part of the canto. Florimel's problem, she is chased and justly afraid of certain dangers, but she's too afraid. If this is a poem about chastity, about proper sexual behavior, there's such a thing as being too afraid, too fearful. A chastity or a virginity that is based on simply fearing the opposite sex, fearing desire, fearing love. Britomart is learning to thread that complicated tiny little needle where it's like you've got to be chaste, you've got to be proof against desire, not master your desire, but also not afraid of desire. You're not having inappropriate sex, but you're also not afraid of love, right? Why does she knock Marinel onto his beach so easily? Well, partly she's an incredible badass, and she has an enchanted spear that makes her invincible on horseback, but also because Marinel is afraid. Britomart is a figure of appropriate chastity, of healthy chastity. Marinel, at this point in the poem, is a figure of unhealthy, fearful separation from sex. His mother's keeping him away from all the ladies. He's going along, he's staying away from all the ladies for fear that they will undo him. He is afraid of love. Britomart is not as brave as she should be, not as brave as she will be by the 12th canto, but she's not afraid of love like this. And if anything, she's trying to shake off some of that fearfulness. Marinel represents actually the fear and anxiety she has to overcome, and she literally overcomes it by busting him. Florimel and Marinel, whose names rhyme, ain't that funny? This lady who's running away, and this knight who's running away from Arthur, and this knight that Britomart has knocked on his tuchus are both fearful of love, and this is what makes them problematic in this section of the poem. They are failing to do the right thing. They are also, and you won't get this from Canto 4, they're a couple. Spenser's holding on to that. Marinel and Florimel are in the same canto together because they are going to end up together. He needs a good lady to steer him right, and our fearful Florimel is the gal for him. Could you see that on the first read? No one can see the first read. I think I missed it the second time through too, but it's there. Spenser is working in stealthy ways. In the same way, he sets up Marinel with this apparently totally separate thing where Britomart complains to the ocean gods. Well, here comes someone from the ocean gods. There are connections that are intuitive and subtle that Spenser is making. So let's go along for the ride.